Who's up for some Crazy House? It's my favorite chess variant, and with the COVID-19 pandemic across the world, interest in online chess has surged, which I think is great because it just leads to more chess games and more Crazy House games. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Crazy House, it's kind of like double chess or bug house, except you don't play with you're not on a team playing against another team. It's one on one. So how it works is whenever you capture your opponent's piece, the color reverses, and now that becomes your piece to drop at pretty much at any time during the game, anywhere on the board, whenever you feel it's most beneficial. So that just leads to incredible possibilities, sacrificial attacks, combinations. It's really, really fun. I consider myself to be a decent Crazy House player, and obviously not the best. On leechess.org, my rating is usually between 21 and 2200. I think I have some really fun and great games that I can use to entertain you and to educate you, to show typical strategies, tactics, tips, all things that will help raise your Crazy House game. But also, I want your recommendations. If you have a great game that you've played, feel free to send it to me, and I'll analyze it and maybe even post it on this channel. Also, if you have recommendations on top-level Crazy House games that you've seen, send them my way, and I can analyze them and again post them on this channel. Let's share, and let's all indulge in the amazingness that is Crazy House. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started on this game. So this was I was playing against someone who's around 2050. Probably, I think I played this on chess.com a few years ago, and the time control was 3-0. So 3 minutes for the whole game for each side. And all my Crazy House games thus far, from as far as I can recall, have been 3-0. So that'll be the time control that we'll be seeing in my subsequent games. So for this game, I was white, and let's get started. All right, so I open with e4, and then knight f6. So Alekhine defense. E5, knight d5, knight c3, e6. So this is really kind of a typical Alekhine's defense. And here is where I deviate. And as you know, this makes it known this is a Crazy House game, right? And so I bring the queen out probably too soon, but just being really aggressive. In Crazy House, you want to be aggressive. You want to force the issue. You want to take the initiative. You can go too far, but at the end of the day, we're also trying to have fun here. So queen h5, really aggressive move, attacking the pawn on f7. So that could be a sacrificial opportunity in the future. From Black's perspective, it'd be great to drop a pawn or a bishop on here to attack the queen and maybe protect the pawn on f7. But really, he doesn't have any diagonal pieces yet. So he'll have to be on the lookout for that. A simple move like g6, which you could easily play in a regular chess game, this fails dramatically in this position. White can just take the knight on d5. So there you go. You see the knight right here ready to drop. And if Black takes the queen, then you bring that knight onto f6, and this position is deadly. So that Black knight on d5, it pretty much teleports and becomes a white knight at your disposal. So that's the beauty of Crazy House, just leads to incredible possibilities. Okay, so that's how a move like g6 could just be punished. Okay, so Black didn't play g6, thankfully for him. He played knight c6, and now White just develops with knight f3, and here Black played d6. But really missed an opportunity to take advantage of the queen on h5 is no longer defending this pawn on c2. So Black, a really good move here would have been knight db4, threatening the pawn on c2. And so White would actually have a hard time defending that pawn. If he tries bishop d3, well, this just leads to now Black has a bishop to drop right on g6, and attacking the queen, protecting the pawn on f7. Now Black just has a great position, and White has holes everywhere. This pawn is weak, c2 is soft. Black is much better here. Okay, so bishop. That's what happens on bishop d3. If White tries to protect the pawn by playing king d1, so he's protecting the pawn, but now White has lost the chance to castle kingside or queenside. and the king is going to be stuck in the middle. So black just simply develops with d6. This knight is very it's annoying. If white tries to kick it with a3, well, he just runs into knight takes c2. This is a very typical sacrifice in Crazyhouse. Look at the king is exposed. These light squares are weak. Black just has a really good position here. He can drop a pawn on g6, so now the queen is no longer attacking the f7 square, and this fortifies the king side. Black just has a really good position here. If white doesn't play a3 and instead just play something like bishop b5, well, black can just kick the bishop, bishop takes, knight takes, and on the next move he's going to drop a bishop on g6, and again black just has a really comfortable position. White's queen is misplaced, his king is stuck in the middle. This is a great position for black. So a missed opportunity by not playing knight d4. Okay, so what did black play? Black played pawn to d6, and so white just develops, pinning the knight against the king. Knights are really strong in Crazyhouse as they are in Double Chess or Bug House. So it's pick off as many knights as you can. All right, so black played bishop d7 here, but again he could have played knight b4. It just wouldn't be as effective here because white now has the opportunity to castle. So if black takes the pawn, white just continues to develop. He doesn't care about the rook because he's just going to continue developing. The bishop is now hitting the queen, and the rook is hitting the knight. So there's a lot of attacks going on, and white just has really good development here. If black plays bishop b7, then just trade, and then drop another bishop on g5. So black can't interpose with the bishop anymore. If he tries dropping a pawn on f6, well, this just leads to a really bad position because now white can drop a pawn on g7, rook g8, queen h7, and black just has a miserable position. White is crushing here. Okay, so that wouldn't be a good idea, dropping on f6. Black is probably better off just playing queen d7. Unfortunately, he's still, this pin just became even stronger. And so white can just take his time and capture the knight on a1. And, black can probably follow up with the bishop on g6, queen h4. And, I think this is playable for both sides. I like white's position because he's fully developed. He has a knight to drop. These pawns are kind of wedging in the black's position. But black does have a pawn and a rook to drop, and this bishop's very strong. So it's a game. It's a game here. So again, knight b4, another would have been good on in this scenario, but not as strong as the move before. All right, so black didn't play knight b4, he played bishop d7. So now this was white's opportunity to really take advantage and take an initiative. So how could he have done that? So white should have played knight takes d5. So this would have been a really strong move. Now white has a knight to drop. Black has nothing better than to take back the knight. And now you drop a knight on g5, threatening a nasty mate on f7. So black has a number of different ways to counter this, but none of them are that good. So one option is to just play g6 right here. So if he plays g6, white just simply sacrifices on f7. Very typical sacrifice. So black can take the knight or take the queen. Let's say he takes the queen, then white takes the queen. So black can take the knight with either the rook or the king. If he takes the knight with the rook, well, that just runs into f7. King takes f7, knight g5, king g6, queen f7, and you can see where this is going. This is just going to be this is over. It's going to be made in one move. So that clearly doesn't work out very well. If black captures the knight with the king, maybe running away to the queen side, well, that allows white to play queen f6 with a double attack on the king and the rook. So white's going to pick up a rook. Black's position is soft on f7, and he has many weaknesses. This is just a winning position for white as well. Okay, so that's what happens on g takes h5. Now, the other possibility is to take the knight. So black could take the knight, But again, this leads to a nasty attack. White could play knight g5 check. Okay, so if black plays king e8, you almost have a checkmate because you drop a pawn on f7, king e7, but you're missing that one diagonal piece that's going to finish the game off. So you don't have it here. I mean, you could play something like queen takes g6. You know, black has a free move now, but it's going to be very hard to prevent it's going to be very hard to prevent checkmate here. So this would be very good. That being said, there is something more forcing. Instead of dropping a pawn on f7 immediately, you're better off just sacrificing the queen. It's not even a sacrifice because now you pick up that second pawn that you need. Black has to capture the queen, and now here you go, 1, 2, checkmate, and that's all it takes. And the queen, the queen is just a way to get another pawn, and that's what's amazing about Crazyhouse. There's all kinds of amazing sacrifices that you can play. All right, so that is what happens on king takes f7. All right, so let's go back to knight g5. So instead of g6, black can play queen e7, defending the pawn on f7. What happens here? Well, you know, white just goes for it again. Knight takes, queen takes, king takes, and here we go. Knight g5 check, king e8, queen f7, king d8. So what you really want here is you'd love to drop a knight on e6, and then bishop takes, and then knight takes e6 with check. You'd love to do that, but the bishop is guarding it right now. So what you can do is you can pick up another knight with bishop takes c6. Bishop takes c6 would be awful because of knight e6, king c8, and then mate. So you wouldn't want to play that. What you would want to play is b takes c6. I mean, still though, now white can drop a knight on e6. Bishop can't take because it will be mate. King c8, and now what you can do is you can drop a pawn on b7, deflecting the king from the bishop on d7. So now white is slowly pushing black to the side of the board. So there's a nasty threat on this pawn on c7, so black has to counter that somehow. And note that, look at how much material black. He has so much material, but he can't do anything. The white king is so safe. It can castle whenever it wants. It's just so safe. And so it's always a balance between attack and defense. And right now, white just doesn't have to worry about defense. So it's a huge plus that he can just keep attacking. All right, so black can drop a bishop on b6, you know, also hitting the pawn on f2, so that's kind of nice. But white just keeps going. Bishop a6, king takes, queen takes c6. Now this bishop is pinned, so he can't even capture on f2 even if he wanted to. So now there's also a nasty threat of knight takes c7, king a5, queen b5 checkmate. So somehow black needs to counter that right now. He could drop a knight on e8, you know, protecting the pawn at c7. But again, white kind of has a free move here. Black is not threatening anything, so he could just play a4. Yeah, simple. Just play a4 and continue the attack. So the what is the purpose behind a4? Well, if black were to play a not so good move like h6, then what can white do? He can drop a pawn on b5. Black has to play king a5. Now, if this was regular chess, you could just play queen c3, and that would be checkmate. But in Crazyhouse, black could drop a piece on b4. So you don't want to play that. What you want to do is instead decoy the king to b4. And now this is checkmate. Okay, so that's how that works. So a4 is dangerous. a4 is very dangerous. So a move like h6 would obviously lose the game. Black would be better off just, you know, maybe dropping a knight on b4. It attacks the queen, and it prevents a pawn on b4. So I mean, that's, you know, kind of saves the game for now. But this ultimately loses as well because white can just play queen b5, king b7, and pick up the knight. So this, you know, black's king is weak. He has weak light squares on a6 and c6. White has great development. He can castle the next move if he chooses to do so, or he can just continue attacking. So this would be completely winning for white. Okay, so that's what happens on queen e7. Now there's one more move to look at. Let's go back to the knight g5 position. Yeah, here we go. So we looked at g6, we looked at queen e7. What about knight drop on g6? So this kind of blocks the diagonal to f7, and it's kind of salvaging the position for now. So again, there's a threat of you're again the knight sacrifice on f7. But before you do that, it'd be nice to pick up another knight. So bishop takes, pawn takes, and now you sacrifice on f7. Really nothing better than to take the knight, drop a knight on g5, and now black is obviously in a lot of trouble. If he plays king to e8, then can just you could drop a pawn on f7, but then black can play king e7. You don't really have how do you continue the attack? Maybe you want to sacrifice on g6, but again, just like in the previous line, better to just give up the queen with check, forcing the situation. Again, it's all about initiative. It's about forcing the situation. You don't want to give your opponent one move. You don't want to give him a single break, because that could give him a chance to launch his attack. Not really a threat right now, but one move can make a difference in a back and forth Crazyhouse game. So really, black has nothing better than to take the queen, drop a pawn on f7, king e7, drop a knight on g8. The rook has to take the knight, and now you can promote to a queen. And this is just a completely crushing position. There's a massive mate threat on f7. Black's king is stuck in the middle. I mean, white has a rook to drop. Black has some material, but he can't do anything with it. So this would be completely winning for white. The only unfortunate thing here is that white, there's no win with by under promoting to a knight. It's too bad, because in this position, so knight g8 is checked. The king has to go to e8, but you just don't have that diagonal piece to mate the king. You have a rook, and this might still be winning because white just has a huge position and black's king is so weak, but there's not an immediate win. So it's just too bad, because it's always nice to under promote. And I do have games where I under promote in Crazyhouse to win. So be sure to look out for that when it gets posted. Yeah, but you don't need to promoting to a queen. It's just completely winning. Okay, there was one more line here in this position after knight takes f7 and then dropping a knight on g5. Instead of king e8, what if the king goes to e7? So let's try that, king e7. So here you have a pawn to drop, and there you go, drop a pawn on f6. If the king goes to e8, well, this just transposes into what we saw before. So nothing new there. So really, what's the alternative? Pawn takes, king takes f6, and now knight takes h7 with check, and this is just absolutely crushing. The king is completely exposed. White's queen is all over the place. This knight is only defended by the king. This is completely winning. There's really nothing more to look at here. It's just a matter of time, really. Yeah. So missed opportunity for white. It looks like knight takes d5 is completely winning, and it's just it was a missed opportunity, and it just goes to show you always want to keep up the initiative in Crazyhouse. All right, so let's go back to the game. White didn't take the knight on d5, played d4, developing, and so now black played a good move, played knight cb4. This is a very good move, attacking the pawn on c2. Also, maybe looking for a bishop exchange. A bishop exchange would be in black's favor, because then he can drop a bishop on g6, attacking the queen, protecting the pawn on f7. That would be great for black. So this was a really solid move. And actually, white's in a bit of a bind here. What does he do? He'd love to continue the attack maybe with knight d5, and actually that's what was played in the game. But probably, maybe the best move would have just been to castle. And but this isn't really that great, because black can just take the bishop, knight takes bishop, and then drop a bishop on g6, and black's doing great here. The queen is under attack, this pawn is under attack, this knight is awkward. Black's position is really solid. I would prefer to be black here. And that's what happens on probably white's best move. So white's in a difficult situation here. So what was played in the game is knight takes d5. Continuing the attack and hoping to create a mating net around the king. But this is really risky because black has knight takes c2, king d1, and black is actually winning here if he plays the right move. And unfortunately, black took the rook on a1, which was his fatal mistake, and he would have been much better off taking the bishop on b5. So what this would have done, it creates a nice escape square for the king if needed. And this bishop is a monster. This e2 square is really weak. The knight is threatening the rook on a1. It's just black. If black can survive any kind of attack that white has, then he'll easily win this game. If white tries this queen sack, well, it doesn't work for the simple reason that black has this escape square and white has nothing here. This game is over. Black wins. Yeah. So missed opportunity for black to win this game. Instead, what he did is black took the rook on a1, and that was the downfall. Now this attack is irresistible. Queen takes f7, king takes f7. Drop a knight on g5, king g6, and actually it's mate in 3 now with knight f4. In the game, I played bishop d3, the idea being that I wanted to take this escape square away from the king, and that's what the bishop does. But really, it turns out that that's nothing to be afraid of. This king, the king can't escape. The king can't even escape through here. So it would have been faster to just play knight f4. If the king comes to h6, well, this is a mate, very much like in the game. And if he plays king f5, well, then this is just mate in 2 with pawn e4, king g4, and h3. Yeah. So knight f4 would have been mate in 3. Whereas in the game it takes a little bit longer, but it's okay. It's very common. The thing is that it's very natural, especially in a 3-minute game where you don't have a lot of time. Here's an opportunity. Here you have a bishop that's not really in the game too much. You bring it to d3, and now you bring a new piece into the attack. So it intuitively it makes sense, but it's just not the most direct way to play. So yeah, so now you take a bishop that was on b5, you bring it into the attack, and that's nice. But black could have put up a little bit more resistance. In the game, he dropped a pawn on f5, but he probably would have been better off dropping a rook on f5. This way, if white plays knight f4, king h6, he no longer has that knight f7 mate because of rook f7. But really, it's nothing to be concerned about, because white can just take the rook, and then if king takes f5, then he can drop a pawn on e4. If king g4, rook h4 is mate, and if king g6, well, now knight f4, king h6, knight f7 is mate again. So we've seen this idea before. Yeah. So rook f5 maybe puts up a little bit more. It barely makes a difference, but it maybe would have been a little bit trickier. Yeah. All right. So in the game, black drops a pawn on f5, knight f4. The only move is king h6 and knight f7. There we go. So we've seen this like 3 times now. Yeah. And so yeah, that's it. Black has a rook and a queen that he never got to drop. He's got a queen on the board, but it doesn't matter because white has these beautiful knights. The king is off on h6, and white's king was never really threatened. So yeah, Crazyhouse, take the initiative. Material doesn't matter. King safety is absolutely paramount. Yeah. So I hope you like the game. Thanks for watching. Leave comments below, and I'm looking forward to sharing more videos in the future. Yeah. So stay safe, everyone. Get outside, and see you soon.